Hello, hello. All right. So, hello, everyone. I think I'm live. Okay. So, what we are going to talk about today is boundaries in dating. So, we're going to talk about several things related to this. Hello, everyone who's joining. So how to know if you have weak boundaries and just like issues with boundaries, why boundaries matter, um, you know, how it's going to make you the kind of woman who is valued and pursued and invested in. Just what are boundaries in general? We're going to get a definition for that. And then I'm going to give you 3 dating boundaries that I really think all women need to have if they want a man who values them and treats them right, and you're going to be kind of mentally and emotionally doing your best in dating. So that's what we're talking about today. So looking back at like my old days dating before I had developed the level of self-worth I have now, level of self-trust and communication skills that I have now, I would find myself really confused and kind of like on this emotional roller coaster when it came to men and intimate relationships with men, and just like also in other areas of my life where my self-worth wasn't really strong. And it just so happened that one of those areas was kind of like with men. So that was because I was not in touch with what my no was and knowing what I wasn't okay with or wasn't comfortable with, and actually standing by it, backing myself up and trusting myself on it. So in other words, I didn't have clear boundaries. Yes, I will save this live. And I didn't have boundaries because I didn't know how to access my boundaries. So I would rely on like outside rules, kind of like you know the book, The Rules. I literally like read that book as a guide. And this would be confusing when there was conflicting information out there about, what your rules should be for dating, what isn't okay. And because it wasn't embodied in my actual belief system, I couldn't really even carry them out successfully if I really liked a guy. All the rules would then just get thrown out because they weren't embodied as my actual authentic boundaries. And so, of course, they were either applied like too rigidly or just would get dropped. And I just feel a lot of anxiety the whole time trying to follow them and afraid of the fallout, because having boundaries and holding boundaries can be very scary. And, with men, my boundaries were often just really weak, or they weren't even really mine. So, I'd be moving the line backwards to where I thought someone else wanted it, or where I perceived, culture was saying, this is the line, this is normal, and this isn't, or, someone else has made up rules. And so there are a lot of mixed messages that we get in culture, especially as women, right? And, you know, lots of questions, right? Like, to what point is too much physical intimacy, and like when should you have sex, and are you supposed to have sex outside of a relationship or marriage or not? Should you wait till you're married or not? And what is okay and isn't okay to accept from a man? Is this just how men are, or is this just what men want and I have to give it to them so they'll like me and want me? Or he's okay with it, so why shouldn't I be? Or I don't know, questions like, should I move in before marriage or before engagement? Or like, when is it okay to? Or should I be only exclusive with him even though I don't have a relationship or I don't have the proposal? Is it okay for him to have multiple partners? Like, what about polyamory, which is a new one that I did not have to deal with when I was dating, but I have heard from several clients, this is a thing now that you're having to deal with. So let me know if this resonates, if you've been confused in your relationships and dating with men, like, let me know. When I was back in my dating days, before I'd done all this inner work, before I had the level of self-awareness that, even though I thought I had self-awareness, like I realize now looking back, like, oh, like there are more layers to go. And before I'd done, really deep work around my self-worth, I really struggled with trusting myself. And so I would just go along with things with a guy, even when inside I didn't actually feel comfortable with it or right about it. but I couldn't come up with any logical reasons why not. And if I couldn't justify it, then I wouldn't trust it. So I doubted myself and almost gaslighted myself into doing things and being okay with things that, looking back on it now, I know were not right for me and were not in my best interest. So some examples, and maybe you'll see these in yourself, but like agreeing to travel to a guy, to meet a guy because he'd come to meet me, he'd invested in me. And so I felt like I needed to return that effort, even though ultimately that's not what I wanted to do. Didn't really feel great. Or dating a guy who was coming on really, really strong from the start. And it felt really uncomfortable. It felt like love bombing and not liking it, but going along with it because, he likes me so much. Like I should just be happy that he's so crazy about me. I should just like go along with it. I shouldn't reject him. Dating him, even though all the red flags were there from the start, but ignoring them and convincing myself out of them. Or continuing to date guys who continued to question my boundaries when I'd say no, continued to push that boundary and telling myself, it's because he likes you so much, or, maybe he won't like you so much if you say no. Definitely things around physical intimacy, getting intimate, not sex, but just other things, like even just making out intensely that I actually didn't feel comfortable with. And my conscience didn't feel right with a guy I barely knew, who I'd only been on a few dates with, but just thinking, well, this is what people do. This is normal. I'm attracted to him. I do like making out, like just be cool and go along with it. Even though inside it was an uncomfortable situation that didn't actually feel right to me. And I just kind of went along with it. And then afterwards, I felt gross and not good with it at all. And I look back today and I'm still like, yeah, that was gross. That didn't feel good, but I wasn't listening to myself. And that kind of pushing of physical boundaries happened like literally all the time with men when I was dating, because I didn't listen to myself fully, was just going along with, pushing along physical intimacy in this culture where we're told like, that's normal. You're supposed to do that. I didn't want to be the, stiff girl, afraid maybe he wouldn't like me, all of those things. So hands up, let me know if that has been you. If you have found yourself confused about your boundaries, if you've said yes to a lot of things that later you felt resentful for and not right about, if you go along with things not to rock the boat or not to upset someone, hands up, if you try to be really pleasing so that you'll be liked. If you came from a childhood where your feelings, needs, and no's were invalidated, shamed, put down, or ignored, and this doesn't have to be the case, it actually wasn't for me, but this plays a huge part in how permeable to non-existent your boundaries will be. Or if you struggle with self-worth, feeling valuable and worthy inside, and you look to others, you chameleon yourself, pretzel yourself into what they say they want or what you think they want. And, if you're not even sure where the line is for you, you've never been asked that and never been respected in that way. You've just always been really good at taking care of everyone else and making everybody else really happy. Okay, so one of the main things that I usually need to work with my clients on when we do work inside my one-on-one coaching and inside the High Value Woman, which is my 5-month group program for women who are wanting to embody their worth and their femininity and find that dream partner and dream relationship, which is currently enrolling. You can find the details for that through the link in my bio, or you can send me a DM. So one thing that we work on is their relationship to themselves and to their boundaries, their yeses and their nos. This doesn't feel right. Something isn't right about this for me. And kind of pulling that apart from society and culture and all the messages that we get on, things that we have taken on that aren't ours and aren't good for us. And finding your conviction to back up your boundaries so they are actually rock solid. Because this is deep inner work, because we carry years and years of programming from our childhoods and from our adolescence and from society that impacts our ability to do this and to follow through on our boundaries. So what are boundaries? Let's just define them. So your boundaries are what defines you and separates you from someone else. We have physical boundaries, we have emotional boundaries, we have boundaries around our time and our energy, we just have general personal boundaries, things that we aren't okay with that are about our personal well-being and safety. Boundaries aren't for the other person. And this is really important. They're not for the other person and they're not about the other person. They are for us and they are about us. So they're there to protect us. They respect us and honor us as individuals. So not everyone has the same boundaries, and others don't have to agree or, agree with or understand our boundaries. They just are because they are a part of who we are. Okay. When we don't have a clear sense of ourselves and a solid sense of our identity, and we aren't in touch with what's going on inside of us, when we don't trust ourselves and we aren't grounded in who we are, in our worth and our value, we will always have weak to non-existent boundaries, because boundaries come from being embodied in ourselves. And embodied means living in our bodies, in touch with what we are feeling, with what is going on internally. And then we actually are in touch with ourselves, so we know what that means. A lot of women I work with are very disconnected from their insides, from their bodies. A lot of us live from like the neck up. And we, because of that, are actually disconnected from our identity. And we are lacking a strong inner masculine, which is our protector, which is the rules and the order and the structure that keeps us safe and honors us. And so this is why a lot of women who struggle with boundaries are also afraid of intimacy, because we fear that we're going to be engulfed, which we probably will be because we don't have strong boundaries. So we're kind of like reeds just being blown in the wind. And so we tend to have a lot of excuses for both ourselves and for other people. So we aren't showing up in our rooted and grounded inner strength and conviction. We aren't taking personal responsibility. We're putting a lot of blame on other people, and we're building up resentment that actually is kind of our fault. And I know that's hard to hear. So on the one hand, we understand, it is our conditioning and our programming. And, that is how that developed very young, generally, right? That was out of our control because it developed very young. We didn't have awareness or, the ability to make a different decision for how we were going to be in the world, right? But as adults, we are responsible for our decisions. We are responsible to heal the parts of us that sabotage us and get us into these situations, have us not have these strong enough boundaries, not know ourselves. And so we can both have so much love and compassion for ourselves, for our younger past selves, for the decisions that we made that maybe we regret, because we were doing the best that we could do with the resources and knowledge we had at the time. And now that you're here, this is your invitation to have awareness around a new layer of empowerment that you get to step into without shaming yourself, because that's not going to help. So I just look back on younger me who made, so many mistakes and decisions that I wouldn't have made now, just with love and compassion. So I wanted to insert that. We want to look at this with love. So when we are embodied, when we are rooted and have healthy self-worth and are convicted about right and wrong, okay and not okay, people can feel that. So a woman with boundaries, she knows who she is. She knows her value. She has inner self-worth, not externally based self-worth. So she's rooted and grounded in unchanging truths instead of being tossed around by the culture and what we're being told right now is the thing to do. So she isn't afraid of intimacy because she's strong in herself. So for me, something that I believe and have seen in my life since really understanding and building my relationship with God is that God is the one who outlines for us the most healthy boundaries for us. And I did not have that when I was younger, and it had a lot to do with why I was so confused. He also gave us a conscience. And so we can actually feel inside what is right and wrong. But we can be really disconnected from this. And that makes us easy targets for men who want to use and abuse us and toss us aside when we no longer serve them. And second, even people without bad intentions are usually responding to us in how they show up with us. They're responding most of the time to how we are showing up. They're sensing and hearing in everything about how we present ourselves and communicate and our energy, whether or not we are someone who honors and respects and values ourselves. And so it's not always the other person when we get into these situations repeatedly. It's actually that they are mirroring something about how we treat ourselves in their treatment of us and what we expect for ourselves and how things get to be for us. So boundaries aren't really a long explanation. They aren't trying to convince someone to agree with us. They're about listening to ourselves and our conscience, our inner knowing, and acting on that, regardless of if the other person is respecting them. Men want a woman of high value, just like we want a man of high value, right? So one way this is communicated is by having these very strong inner embodied, authentic boundaries. So I'm going to give you my top 3 dating boundaries that I recommend that all women have in dating in just a minute. But before that, I want to talk a bit about the High Value Woman Mastermind in case that might be a place that you want to dive deeper into this and get that deeper support. So this is my group coaching program for high achieving women who want to find and keep that amazing relationship with a high quality, committed man that's going towards marriage, ideally, right? And so this is currently enrolling. It is the 7th round that we're enrolling for. This is my signature program. It's got literally everything in it that you need to get from wherever you are right now into a committed relationship with your right person. So we have weekly live coaching calls where I lead. Everybody gets time to get coached, to bring their questions, to get those questions answered, and to learn also on those calls from each other. We get to build community with each other. So you're not feeling so alone on this dating journey, especially if you're like one of the last of your friends, or maybe the single friend in your group, and just feel like there isn't anybody else who's going through it and someone who can relate. On those calls, you get my laser attention on you. You will get personally coached by me on every single call on exactly what you need in your next step. You get a 9-module online course, which is very, very, very in-depth breakdown of literally everything that you need. So all of the necessary components that you need in place, need to understand in order to have that dream relationship and keep it. Because the goal is not just that you get a great guy, but that lasts. So you're guided through the inner work. There are several modules on that. The healing work, the belief system work, the inner child work, embodying your self-worth, all of that very, very deep inner work. This is really where we have to start in order for you to be able to have and hold those very strong boundaries. Then you get the practical toolkit for dating like a high value woman, how to approach it, how to handle the common situations that come up, the roadmap for getting into a committed relationship as quickly as possible. And this is really within 2 months of meeting your dream man. We do work around making an amazing online dating profile. You will learn how to do that. You will get my feedback on that. You will also learn how else can you meet men if that's not how you want to meet someone. You can also meet him in real life. You get the feminine embodiment work so you can truly embody your authentic feminine energy, your authentic feminine self, which is the secret sauce to having men who are high quality masculine men pursuing you, investing in you, putting in the effort, and seeing you as his dream woman. You get communication skills and tools that you need to have this relationship work so that things don't blow up. The kind of difficult conversations that we have to have, the things that we need to talk about. How do you actually have that in a way that is going to draw you two together instead of split you two apart? The ways that we need to communicate with men so that we can actually be received and heard. There's a whole module on men, understanding men, how they're operating differently than us, how they're approaching dating and choosing someone and commitment, what they're looking for in a woman, what they're needing from a woman. How do I identify if he is a quality, commitment ready, serious man, and if he's truly serious about you? Recognizing those red flags really quickly so you can just move on and not waste time on these men that are not going to be a good fit. You get support on sabotaging behaviors and ending your sabotage cycle. So when we talk about intimacy fears and commitment fears, which a lot of us have and we don't even know that we have, there's a whole section on that. If you are still single and you're saying, I don't want to be single, it is likely there's some sneaky sabotage coming in right now. So you'll get that addressed. Then you also get a private Facebook group. So outside of our group sessions, there are going to be questions that come up. You're going to be talking to men and you're going to be like chatting with a guy and you're going to have questions about how do I respond? What does this mean? Is this a red flag? and you get support in that group. I am in there personally responding to your questions, during the week. It's usually like the same day. So you're getting that support as you're actually implementing everything that you're learning and getting from the calls. You also get a one-on-one call with me. So this is the only way that you can just get a one-off call with me without being in my private coaching. So this is where we can go really deep together on that call. We can get to some of those really root core things that are holding you back. So you get all of that as part of the mastermind, and you get all this for 5 months. And we have 3 calls every month, same time every week for typically the first 3 weeks of the month. You get continued access to the modules and the replays of those calls for 5 months after we're over. So you have lots of time to really practice and integrate and let this actually transform you. So right now, there are 2 early birds available if you apply and enroll before September 15th. So you get an extra one-on-one call with me right now that you can take before we even start. So if you've got a situation going on right now that you want my support with, you get that call before we even start the mastermind. You also get a private audit of your dating profiles. Sometimes women don't want to post that in the group. If you enroll now, you don't even have to do that to get my feedback. You can get that private audit of your profiles to make sure that they're really set to attract the type of man that you want. You have no idea how many dating profiles I see that are just not going to attract to you the amount and the quality of the men that you're wanting to attract, but some tweaks, and suddenly you're like overwhelmed with quality matches. This is a very, very, very common problem I see. We just don't know what men are looking for on the apps. So all of that, those 2 bonuses you get if you apply and enroll before the 15th. So if you want the details, if you want to join, you can send me a DM. I will send you the details, and you can also find that through the link in my bio. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can find that through the description box. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 dating boundaries that I recommend that you have with men in dating to save you struggle, pain, heartache, and to help your self-worth not be tanked by dating. So the first is physical boundaries. And what I'm going to say in the modern dating world tends to be kind of controversial, but I'm giving you the science behind why I'm going to say this. So we live in a culture that says, in terms of your physical boundaries, like do whatever you want, whatever you feel like, follow your pleasure, basically you can just be like an animal, essentially. Like there's nothing wrong with casual and committed sex. You should try him out before you get into a relationship with him. Female empowerment is all about sexual liberation and the ability to have sex with anyone. Okay, fair and good. But I'm going to tell you that this does not align with how men and women have evolved and are different. And we know that from science. So these pieces of advice work pretty fine for men. In fact, men are basically having a heyday right now in the modern dating world because they can get everything for nothing. They can go on a date or 2 with a woman and essentially get sex, right, for free. He didn't have to invest very much. He doesn't have to be committed to her. He doesn't have to love her. He doesn't have to be truly invested in her. You just have to pay for a couple dates, say the right things, be hot and charming. So men can have sex without emotional attachment. This is a difference between men and women, without seeing a future, without wanting a future, and without feeling any differently about a woman afterwards. You should know this. Biology does not agree that women can handle sex the same way that men can, that we can have sex the same way that men can. Overall, we can't. And that's because we are designed for bonding. So when we get physical with a man, it muddies our thinking. It muddies our decision-making. It muddies our ability to choose well. Let me know if you've experienced this. Because we get bonded, we release oxytocin and other bonding hormones, which bonds us with that man. So we get emotionally entangled and attached. This is not to upset you. This is to give you the truth about what science tells us so that you can make informed decisions and really think about, what are my true boundaries? Am I just going along with the culture, or am I really honoring myself? Okay, because we can't just have sex with no strings attached. Okay, we can lie to ourselves and say that we can, But if you were really honest with yourself, you would find yourself wanting more from that man. And this is especially when we are of reproductive age, because sex in terms of evolution and the human species is to create a child. So our biology says you could have a child with this man. You need him. You're going to need him to take care of you. You're going to need him to take care of the child. So there's a bigger cost for having sex as a woman than as a man, because a man can walk away, but we may not be able to, right? So our bodies are designed for us to attach. So we are designed to be far more cautious and careful about who we have sex with. So there's a huge risk to having sex with strange, uncommitted, unvetted men. Furthermore, it does damage to our self-worth at a subconscious level. When we give that vital, precious part of ourselves to a man, and then he doesn't commit to us and doesn't want commitment from us, it damages our self-esteem at a deep level. So these are just the facts. So there's a reason that we are told in the Bible not to have sex outside of marriage. It's a protection for women and for children and for the family unit to be intact. So when you feel weird and not quite right and kind of gross and icky about getting physically intimate with men who are essentially strangers, men who are not committed to you, there's a reason for that. And so not having sex outside of the safe container of commitment is a boundary that is very healthy for a woman to have. It is very good for you to have for yourself. It demands respect from men. It forces them to actually take the time to get to know us and invest in us, and repels the men who didn't want anything serious with us. They didn't want anything more with us. And so for the men who may want something but they aren't sure, it allows you to both kind of get to know each other and figure that out without your emotions getting involved, without your self-worth getting involved. So the next boundary is emotional well-being boundaries. Do not allow yourself to be in the company of a man, to give time, energy, anything to a man who doesn't treat you in the way that makes you feel good. You want to feel safe. You want to feel cared for. You want to feel special. You want to feel important. You want to feel that your feelings are important to him. So if he puts you down, if he criticizes you, if he has volatile emotions that don't feel safe, if he takes something out on you, if he treats you in a way that makes you feel small and unworthy, it would be a good thing to have a boundary around that. So when someone consistently doesn't honor how you're feeling, and no one's perfect, right? So sometimes he might mess up, but he's not doing it on purpose, and he cares when you express, right? But if you communicate, that didn't feel good, or like, please don't X, Y, Z, you see how that person responds, whether or not they're honoring of that or not. Remember, boundaries aren't for the other person. They're not to tell someone else what they have to do. They're about what you're going to do. So what you will and will not entertain and allow in your space, which means a boundary is like walking away. No more time or energy given here, right? The next is time and energetic boundaries. So our time and energy is valuable, right? So how much time should you be giving a man you don't know, haven't met yet? Maybe you've just talked to him online or have only been on a few dates with. Not much, right? How much time should you be investing in a man who isn't showing up in a serious way with you, isn't clearly moving things forward with you, doesn't have clear intentions with you? Again, not much. Has he earned the level of time and investment and energy investment that you're giving him? Has he earned the level of time that you're investing with how much you're messaging with him, how much you're texting with him, how much you're on the phone with him, how much you're thinking about him even, how much you're talking about him even, how much you're doing things for him, traveling to him? All of these things are actual time and energy investments. Have boundaries around this. People need to earn more and more of that through their actions consistently done over time. And again, I want you to be in touch with and noticing, how do different things feel that this man is or isn't doing? Notice how it feels, if it sits right with you. Setting boundaries for yourself around your time and your energy investment and what offers you're going to say yes or no to. No, that doesn't work for me. No, I don't feel comfortable with that. That doesn't feel good to me. Simple is all that is needed. You want to be a woman whose boundaries come from honoring herself. So they're real, authentic, actually embodied boundaries, from knowing her value, from valuing her well-being, her time, her energy, her emotions. So that is the end of talking about boundaries. So thank you so much for being here. If you have questions about the program, if you want the details for the program, then you can send me a DM and I am happy to answer. Bye.